Welcome, everyone, to Sunday Mornings at the Marxist Library. Sunday Morning at the Marxist Library is a weekly program originating in Oakland, California, originally at the Nebel Proctor Marxist Library in Oakland, but on the internet on Zoom for the past few years since the COVID pandemic. We have weekly programs on a variety of topics. We encourage everybody to go to our website, ICSSmarx.org, and sign up for our email notification list. By doing so, you'll receive a weekly email reminder with a Zoom link to the upcoming presentation. Today, we have an unusual and special session planned. We're all aware of the student movement that has arisen both in the United States and worldwide in support of the Palestinian struggle and against the US and Israeli Zionist genocide that's taking place against the Palestinian people. What we're going to have today is a group discussion on the topic. We want to encourage everybody to participate and express your views, what you're thinking and what you're feeling about what's going on and the significance of what's going on and what we can do about it. We're going to start today. We're going to have a little bit different format for today's session. We're going to start with some short presentations, basically from our committee, expressing their views on the subject, and we're going to intersperse it with some video footage of what's been going on and some video of things that are relevant to the struggle. So I'm going to start by turning it over to Mehmet, and Mehmet is going to give a brief introduction on the topic and to show an important video that we want to show everybody. So go ahead, Mehmet. And you have to unmute, Mehmet.
Right. Thank you, Alan. Welcome all. Like Alan said, this is going to be a different format. Get prepared for great discussion, but also different from our previous formats. We're going to show some videos with songs and music and interviews and explanations of certain people of what happened, discussions there as well. Let's use these as the basis of our discussion, and let's share what we are thinking, what we are experiencing. But we wanted to start the session with a song that I think is going to represent all our feelings. This is an important song. It's a rap song that just came out, and it spread like a wildfire. And thank you, Alan, for finding it and sending it. It was great. So even the mainstream media had to handle this in the acknowledge it, that this was the sentiment of the students, of the people right now in the United States, which to me represents a significant change in the historical line of things, where millions and billions have been spent to control the minds of the people, and they failed. So I'd like to do a share screen and share the video. I don't know if people have seen it or not, and then we will continue with our talks. Okay.
Thank you, Mehmet. Go ahead.
Oh,
and the share is working.
Yeah, but I didn't do what you told me to do, so I will be doing the share again. Just a minute. Is the share screen this one?
And sorry, it was not multiple. You can do it now. Sorry, that was my fault.
Yeah, that's okay. No, where is the let's see if the
lower left,
yeah, I don't see it there. So, share sound. Okay, there you go. In the new one, they changed the place. Okay. Tell me if you can't hear this.
I'll let you know. It's good.
Yeah. The people, they won't leave. What is threatening about divesting and want a piece? The problem isn't the protests, it's what they're protesting. It goes against what our country is funding. Block the barricade until Palestine is free. Block the barricade until Palestine is free. When I was 7, I learned a lesson from Cuban Eazy-E. What was it again? Oh yeah, fuck the police. Actors and badges protecting property in a system that was designed by white supremacy. But the people are in the streets. You could pay off Meta, you can't pay off me. Politicians who serve by any means, APAC, Kufi, and all the companies. You see, we sell fear around the land of the free, but this generation here is about to cut the strings. You could ban TikTok, take us out the algorithm, but it's too late. We've seen the truth, we bear witness. Seen the rubble, the buildings, the mothers and the children, and all the men that you murdered, and then we see how you spin it. Who gets the right to defend and who gets the right of resistance? Has always been about dollars and the color of your pigment. But white supremacy is finally on blast, screaming free Palestine to their home at last. We see the lies and claiming it's anti-Semitic to be anti-Zionist. I seen Jewish brothers and sisters out there inviting in solidarity and screaming free Palestine, with them organizing and learning and finally cutting ties with the state that's gotta rely on apartheid system to uphold an occupying violent history. Been repeating for the last 75. The Nakba never ended, the colonizer lied. If students' intents posted on the lawn, occupying the quad is really against the law, and a reason to call in the police and their squad. Where does genocide land in your definition, huh? Destroying every college in Gaza and every mosque, pushing everyone into Rafah and dropping bombs. The blood is on your hands, Biden, we can see it all. And fuck no, I'm not voting for you in the fall. Undecided, you can't twist the truth. The people out here united, never be defeated when freedom's on the horizon. Yet the music industry's quiet, complicit in their platform of silence. What happened to the artist? What you gotta say? If I was on a label, you could drop me today. I'll be fine with it, cause the heart fed my page. I want a ceasefire, fuck a response from Drake. What you willing to risk? What you willing to give? What if you were in Gaza? What if those were your kids? If the West was pretending that you didn't exist, you want the world to stand up, and the students finally did. Let's get it.
Okay, that was a very powerful video by the popular rap artist Macklemore that has gone viral. It's being played all over the world and really expresses a lot of the sentiments that people are feeling. We have a very special guest today. We have somebody from on the scene in New York City at Columbia University. I'm going to turn it over to Raj. If you would unmute yourself. You are unmuted.
Yes.
And go ahead and do a quick introduction, and then we'll proceed.
Yes, Gautam Dasgupta and I have known each other, have been friends for the past 50 years. He graduated from University of California in Berkeley with a PhD, and then he's been on the faculty at Columbia ever since that time, after he was selected there. And I reached out to him to tell us what are his observations that he saw because police broke up the encampments there. And so I think that's brief enough. Thank you, Gautam, for accepting to speak.
Thank you so much. You guys know so much more than what I do. And I would restrain myself, not constrain myself, to not making some comments that Raj and we spoke in our private conversation, but to make it as objective as possible. Well, Columbia campus was portrayed because maybe the first encampment started there. And then it spread all over. The encampment was demolished without much discussion and other things. And then it again came back. And after that, there was this historic occupation of the Hamilton Hall. I think I think that it coincided with the original Vietnam protests. So maybe I don't know whether the people who wanted to occupy waited for that day to happen or whatever. I have no idea. Why I'm saying that? Because in my mind, the encampment and occupation of Hamilton Hall are quite uncorrelated, meaning that the group who were doing the encampment may or may not be involved in the occupation of the Hamilton Hall. But the way the media portrayed, and most of the people thought that as if that there is an organization who is doing it. Okay, I don't know about that. Nobody has been able to prove anything like that. So I would like to give the benefit of the doubt to analyzing this situation. Okay, I would say one or two words what I feel, and this is the only editorial part on my behalf, and then will be all observation. Okay, in a campus, I think the students have the right for encampment and peaceful protest, meaning that it is not obstructing anybody's views. It is not obstructing anybody's passage, or it is not obstructing anybody's learning and other process. Okay, now Columbia students chose one part of the field which has a flag saying that nothing is going on there, and nobody, crisscrosses through that part. So that was the encampment. Okay, and I tried to say that in one or two letters to some of the people who wrote some editorials in New York Times, and I'm not surprised that they never even tried to print it. That's okay. So I went there, and I will tell you one or two things that I tried to make it a little bit flowery than what I felt and other things. Okay, it so happened that I think I went on April 25th in the encampment, and I mentioned in my unsuccessful New York Times letter that was the celebration of Portugal's 50th anniversary of the Carnation Revolution. Okay, just to emphasize that things happen, and things happen quite successfully. And then another part I said, after a couple of days, it was our Remembrance Day for South Africa, and the reconciliation thing happened. Okay, so in my mind, that unless there is a discussion or reconciliation, technical terms and other things will be thrown all around, and people will not know what we mean. Like Raj and I, we might be talking about the same musical piece about a raga, but if his keys are different from mine, the notes, the scales, then he will think that I'm talking about a different raga. So this is the situation that we are in. Things have been thrown around, editorialized, and nobody has taken the hard look into a scientific way of treating these issues. Well, normally we expect that in a university, okay, there will be an open forum where people could come, talk, exchange, and other things. Nothing like that happened. Okay, so my personal views are something, and I know that many of the people will not agree. Sometimes I also do not agree with that. I'm all in favor of the encampment, but I am opposed to any kind of, occupation of any of the university buildings for many reasons. First, there are people who go normally, come in and go out. And then the thing is that from our previous experience, we know that a lot of times the violence is initiated, okay, by the authority kind of things. In fact, when I went to the campus, I mentioned one of our experiences in Berkeley that FBI admitted that they penetrated Hare Krishna. Okay, so what does that mean? So in order to keep things in order, okay, I felt that what happened, the encampment became a victim of the occupation of Hamilton Hall. Even though I do not know, I haven't seen, maybe I'm wrong, I have not been checking the Internet of Things. I don't think that that New York City Police Department have been able to produce one single person in Hamilton Hall who didn't have a Columbia affiliation. I haven't seen that. Okay, and I'm admitting maybe I'm wrong. So that was the main focus of all the news areas, at least here, all the news venues. That's what happened in Colombia. Okay. Now I was there about a couple of hours before that. I didn't go to the encampment that day. I was just going around, and I saw that things were warming up, meaning that there were police vans even 2-3 blocks from there. I mean, that was something a bit scary. Okay, they went all the way up to Riverside Church, which is almost like 2 blocks. So all the vans were parked. Okay, so at about 8 or 9, I understand that there were 3 people who were supposed to go and negotiate. One of them is one of the preachers from New York area, and he was blocked. The police said, no, you cannot go because we are going there. But he said, look, I came here to negotiate. So that was the thing. And you saw, the police going in, and it was quite a spectacular thing. And what has been achieved? I don't know, unless and until I see that that the objective of the protesters is met. And there I have, again, this is the part that I'm editorializing. Okay, this is my views. I'm going to say is one that I thought that there were some global issues like divestiture and other things. Okay, that goes back to the military-industrial complex. And I was really surprised to notice that not a single person mentioned about that. Even though this industrial military complex was coined by the president of Colombia, who was General Eisenhower. Okay? We cherry pick even our own messages. So what does that tell me? That tells me that in the name of academic freedom, okay, we are not truthful to our academic mission. We will cherry pick history, which goes in favor of us. Okay, that also goes back to the Nuremberg trial. Even though the U.S. Chief Justice was heading that. In fact, I think even in his introduction, he mentioned that justice should be such that unbiased, and even if it goes against us, we cannot just step back. Okay? Now, all right. So somehow or other, internationally, we have accepted certain words, okay, of that collective punishment. without any bias. Who started what and other thing? Of course, I'm not condoning what Hamas did. Okay, maybe that was the thing that they felt it right, or Israel is doing what they felt it right. But I'm not getting into that. I'm just trying to say that, look, in certain way, at least in today's atmosphere, there might be a better way to deal with this kind of situation that we do not want to do, because basic thing in my mind is the profit motive. And I told my friends that I can bring peace in 2 minutes in the whole of Gaza area if I can prove that there is more money to be made by Donald Trump's high rise against the Gaza Strip than the profit from the war. Okay? So a lot of time we are not seeing that the profit motive and other things which are going on. And I'm not a specialist in that. And I cannot even come close to Chomsky. Chomsky has, wrote all these things down, and he has a lot of different kind of political and anti-political views, whatever is that. So I'm just trying to tell people that these are the things that I have seen on the ground, okay? And not having a discussion is perhaps the worst situation, more than bringing like military kind of policemen inside the campus. Because what happens once we step back from all this intellectual discourse, which can really bring peace, because bringing police or threatening people is never going to work in my mind. Okay, so that is the part I feel collectively the what should I say, the academic administrations have failed. Now maybe that is, we are very afraid today, even talking about other things, that we can see that even, people, when they express some of the views, right, that how that death threats and other things come to them. We have seen that. This is a kind of a new phenomenon, right? So coming back to, what should I say? If I could share my ignorance, and that's what I told Raj, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to share this feeling that we are saying something which we are not doing it. And Raj asked me to see that because I have been to Colombia, I have seen something and other things. And there, I will tell you, more than bringing the military-style New York City policeman inside, okay, is that we have some or other strangled the opposition, the discussion, other views, okay, which are supposed to be there. And also in New York Times, I wrote one thing that Columbia is a university. University in Sanskrit is Visya Vidyalaya. Visya means universe. Vidyalaya means place of studies. So we are saying that it should be objective, whether Columbia University is in New York or in Gaza or in Israel or in Scandinavia. It should not matter, because we have to take a universal view on that. Okay, then the business part and other things have to be done in a way that not under the name of university, because university should do something which is universal, not against this person or that person. And I'm just going to share it with you that a lot of time we legislate something. So some of the definitions are going to be legislated, and all I think waiting for the passage from the Senate. Well, I tell that the best definition was legislated by by the state legislature in Indiana that pi equal to 3 point something. So that they legislated that, right? So that means that what we are thinking, and if that pi equal to 3.0 was the legislative value, so all the satellites, all the things that we are talking about will collapse. And I'm not surprised that that is again going to happen. So the students are doing, in my mind, right thing, and I think there is, I don't know, either in New York Times or in I think maybe either in New York Times or maybe European News or something, that there was a journalist who mentioned that one of the reasons that many of these commencements were canceled because they felt that majority of the students will walk out. So that would be, severe blow. So well, I promised that I will not talk more than 5 minutes, but I did it. Just to say that, I mean, you guys are doing studies, other people are, scholarly, analyzing things and other things. I'm neither on that. I was just a bystander, and I saw what it is, and I'm just sharing my ignorance with you, and I'm sure that you will forgive me for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Gautam. We really appreciate that.
Thank you so
very
much.
much. This is what today's session, for those of you who came in late or just want to emphasize, is going to be a group discussion. So start thinking about whatever comments or questions you have, any comments you may want to make. In a short while, we're going to open up the floor to everybody. Before we do, I'm going to jump back to Mehmet, who is going to finish his introduction, and then Raj is going to speak. So Mehmet, if you would go ahead.
Yeah, actually, what may I intercede to say, I hope Gautam can stay around, so if any specific questions on his observation comes up, he could answer. Gautam, can you stay on? Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mehmet.
Yeah, thank you, Alan, and thank you, Gautam, for that. The discussion, I would like to give a personal view of what happened in 1968, 1970s versus now. Now, this was actually a surprise. I don't know, my ignorance maybe is that this was a surprise when the students did rise up. So I did visit Berkeley and University of California at Sacramento, and did have a chance to talk to people. So it is a coalition. It is a coalition, and what is so significant to me, what is so important to me, is actually that this is taking place at this time when, again, so much money has been spent on brainwashing, and it shows us that that failed to bring people on the side of Israel. And so what I would like to do is that go back to 1970s when the 68 student uprising started. We were students in our university, and that was the bastion of revolutionary movement at that time, back in Turkey. In 1968, I had participated in the student movements, just joining my brothers in the university. And on my first ever participation in such an event, the fascists attacked and broke all the amplifiers and microphones and so on and so forth. So the discussion of whether we can have an open discussion in the universities is very important. But the main subject here is that for the fascists and for the government, this is not acceptable. And especially in a world where we are going towards more oppressive, more fascistic systems, I think that freedom of speech, freedom of thought is going to be much more important. At that time, in the United States, the students were protesting against the Vietnam War, and that was very important. But looking at it from outside the United States, we had questions. The question was that, was the student protest in the US due to self-interest, where the students or their brothers, lovers, or friends were being sent to die? Or were the protests due to really opposing the war on the grounds of morality? I'm sure it was both. But the question of the day was, if the students were not forced to serve in the army, would they have opposed the war on morality alone? That is, did they genuinely care about the Vietnamese? Did they really oppose wars when it didn't concern them? Or were they only trying to avoid going to harm's way when they could have enjoyed the good life? Well, the question was answered first by the French students, who were not forced to a war by starting the anti-war demonstrations. But the real and irrefutable answer came recently, this time, when students of all classes in the most prestigious schools risked their lives and futures when they started these protests in the US. This wasn't a US war where they feared their life, and against all odds, propaganda, attacks, and brainwashing, they took a stand. And we are facing more challenging times now. It is not just only the students, but for the first time, as I can remember, in the US, the workers are taking a stand also. The workers, ILWU, the International Land Warehouse Union, had stopped the Israeli ships from docking to Oakland. And now the workers are again in the process of calling strikes against the attacks on the students. In one of the videos that's coming up, I think we are going to get into that one. So with that, I'll give it back to you, Alan, and listen to the rest of the discussions.
Okay, so now we're going to have Raj make a few comments about what's going on. And then Mehmet, if you want to go show the video after that, that would be good. And then we're going to launch into discussions. So we'll be in discussion after a few announcements after that. So Raj, if you would please go ahead.
Okay, so Alan asked me to provide a larger context to this student movement, which both he and I felt is very significant, along with you, Mehmet, and others. So I'll start by saying this is what is going on is connected with a geopolitical shift taking in the world today. And the October 7 attack on Israel by Hamas led Palestinian resistance, and I'm not saying everything that happened there was wonderful. It was terrible. Deaths of innocents occurred. But what it did was it shook up the Israeli administration, which had established itself that nobody can touch it. If they touch it, they die. In other words, complete domination. So it unnerved them because it was so unexpected. And they reacted with fury. And but in turn, what happened was that they developed an axis of resistance, which was in the making for a long time. Along with Hamas, the Palestinian United Front, PFLP, etc., they were participants in this resistance. Hezbollah, Ansar Allah, which is Houthis, also called Houthis, in Yemen, Iraqi resistance, and Iran. So this development has been taking place for a long time, ever since Israel began to dominate completely on the Palestinians, following the peace accord, which the Palestinians didn't get very much from at all, or nothing at all. Anyway, so this is what set up this scenario where Israel is gone to attack civilians in Gaza, and at least 100,000 casualties, including over 35,000 deaths have occurred, and a lot of them are children and women. So what lies behind is that G7, which is the imperialist countries of colonial times, led by the United States, are supporting Israel by their power in propaganda media, in the UN Security Council, by their veto, and by their military technology. So this is what Palestinians face, and I think this is spreading among ordinary people that that's what's going on. Israel-Palestine conflict, like the Ukraine conflict, is part of a geopolitical shift underway globally. U.S. unipolar power, which started in 91 with the fall of the Soviet Union, has ended, in my opinion. And a new bloc counter to it has arisen, led by Russia and China, which has organized BRICS for trading between these countries, those members, to bypass the controls of the unipolar powers, institutions of the unipolar power. So, but unlike, so the Ukraine proxy war, which is actually a proxy war against Russia, rather than weakening Russia, which was the intention to keep Russia weak, has weakened the EU instead, Germany in particular, but all of EU in general. Now, what started the historic process of national liberation was October 1917 revolution in Russia. That was a tsunami wave that was unleashed for national liberation. It continued throughout the 20th century, but it weakened as socialism itself weakened. It did not end, however, when the Soviet Union collapsed and China accommodated to the world system. But China and Russia both have built economic and military power and organized BRICS that has challenged the unipolar economic power. In fact, as right now, I would say the unipolar power is ended. So the Palestine liberation struggle to defeat this mindset of Zionism, which is the ruling ideology of Israel, and which is tied to the ideology of US-European racist ideology. Okay, it's tied to it, it's similar to it, which justified colonization of the world. And so that also led to the emergence of modern imperialism, capitalist imperialism. So Palestine liberation will happen when imperialism itself is defeated, which is an ongoing process right now. The defeat of imperialism would bring about a more democratic new world order among nations. I don't mean internally. The US student movement is therefore a very important new development leading this healthy trend. It has the potential to move the US society away from its imperialist mindset and wars to keep control, and adjust to the new world of multipolarity that has arisen. Thank you.
Thank you, Raj. Now we're going to shift back to Mehmet, who's going to show a video which is going to talk about some of the events that are taking place. And then we're going to do a quick break for announcements. And then we're going to go to an open discussion on the floor. So Mehmet, if you would go ahead and share and show the video. Video is about how many minutes?
This is the short one, 14 minutes. And for those who didn't know that ICSS has an audiovisual department, here is the production of our I'm kidding, but we did put this together. So hopefully it'll be, it is just to start discussions and for that.
Don't forget to check share sound.
Yeah, I think it was checked.
We need a new system.
I think
we need a new society. We need to demand that which may have sounded
in the wrong window. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the one. This is in the
Okay.
video. Yeah,
Okay.
I had to give the credits to people that I'm taking it
Okay.
from. So
That's
that's yeah.
But what I'm
Possible
seeing on
even
the
a few
screen,
weeks ago.
ma'am,
Yes,
But it's
that's
not
it,
only
Bob.
realizable, but an imperative
not seeing
necessity.
them. We're not seeing.
In a massive nationally coordinated crackdown,
So
the
Mehmet,
United
we're showing
States has
just the
arrested
text
more
on
than
the screen.
3,000 students in the
text.
Oh,
past
okay.
few weeks.
You are not seeing the video?
Right. You're in the
No.
wrong window. That's the problem.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me do this. Share screen once more. Sorry about this. Share screen. And
Our audiovisual
full
department is
screen.
not, our audiovisual department is unpaid, so
unpaid.
is that what you pay for?
Are you seeing David
No,
Becker or not?
No
Maybe.
share screen now. Actually, if everybody would just
This-
hold on that, we'd
Yeah,
appreciate
okay.
it.
That's
This
right.
one?
Yeah,
Okay,
now
good.
we're good. And then now the sound
Many have
needs to
been
be
tear
checked.
gas,
There we
pepper
go. Good. It's
Sound is
good.
there?
Yeah.
Okay.
sprayed. They've been expelled from their housing. Many will be expelled from the universities altogether. At the same time, the United States, bombs and missiles are being used by the Israeli government to launch a devastating attack on Rafah, a city in south part of Gaza where more than 1 million Palestinians have taken refuge. Welcome to the Socialist Program. I'm your host, Brian Becker. Today we're talking with Leanne Fulihan. She is a Palestinian organizer with the Shut It Down for Palestine Coalition. She's a popular educator, organizer, and the education director at the People's Forum, and she is an editor at 1804 Books. We're also speaking with Manolo de los Santos. He's a researcher at Tricontinental Institute for Social Research, and he is a founder and executive director of the People's Forum. Manolo, Leanne, welcome back.
Thanks for having us.
Good to be back with you, Brian.
Thank you for joining. Leanne and Manolo, we were in the streets again last night. Manolo, you were targeted for arrest again by the NYPD. The New York Post ran a major story about it. Again, they got most of the facts wrong, but it is the New York Post after all, so nothing surprising there. Leanne, you were at the Fashion Institute of Technology later in the evening. That was the last encampment that had not yet been shut down by the police, but it too was raided. More than 20 people, I believe, were arrested. I want to start with a clip of the police crackdown last night at FIT, and then I want to get your thoughts, Manolo.
This as the police made their way into this encampment that started back on April 25th. Now, some officers wearing riot gear, others wearing standard uniform. Well, this as they narrowed in on this area that was occupied as demonstrators can be heard chanting. Well, this scene similar to what we saw just last week in the wake of demonstrations at encampments that flooded universities and college grounds, including NYU, the New School, and Columbia. Now, this is believed to be the last remaining encampment on a city campus that was authorized to be cleared by police. And important to note, Columbia University altering their commencement ceremonies by foregoing their university-wide graduation.
Manolo, if this had been taking place in the last couple of weeks in the People's Republic of China or Russia or Cuba or Venezuela, we'd be hearing from the U.S. media that it showed that these countries were not, in fact, democracies, that they were autocratic regimes. But this is what's been going on. Let's talk about it.
I would go even further. If it had been Cuba or China, the UN would have called for sanctions on the regime that would have arrested thousands of students for practicing their right to free speech. And I think what we've seen since April 17th is the continuation of a mass movement in the streets that has brought together hundreds of thousands of young people who feel that they have a right to fight for this just cause, which is the cause of the Palestinian people, to end the genocide. Since April 17th, when the Columbia students took on the first encampment and were so vilely and violently repressed, they sent a call, I think, not just to their fellow students at Columbia, but to students across the country and around the world to also take up this flag, calling to disclose and divest the complicity of universities in the US with the genocide that the Israeli regime is practicing. And, you know, despite the repression, despite hundreds of students being arrested, thousands more came out. And that's what we saw. It extended from Columbia like wildfire to new encampments at FIT, at NYU, at Parsons, at the School of Visual Arts, at the New School, at Fordham University, at the City University of New York, City College campus, and to hundreds of campuses across the country, to the point where, can it really be stopped just by shutting down the encampments? I think no. I think a new movement, a new phase of the movement has been launched.
Yeah, the people they won't leave. What is threatening about divesting and want a piece? The problem isn't the protests, it's what they're protesting. It goes against what our country is funding. Block the barricade until Palestine is free. Block the barricade until Palestine is free. When I was 7, I learned a lesson from Cuban Eazy-E. What was it again? Oh yeah, fuck the police. Actors and badges protecting property in a system that was designed by white supremacy. But the people are in the
Israel's Lebensraum master plan for Gaza, borrowed from the Nazis' depopulation of Jewish ghettos, is clear. Destroy infrastructure, medical facilities and sanitation, including access to clean water, block shipments of food and fuel, impose telecommunications blackouts, unleash indiscriminate industrial violence to kill and wound hundreds a day. Let starvation and epidemics of infectious diseases, along with the daily massacres and the displacement of Palestinians from their homes, turn Gaza into a mortuary. Israel has killed or seriously wounded close to 100,000 Palestinians in Gaza, almost 1 in every 20 inhabitants. It has destroyed or damaged 60% of the housing. The safe areas to which some 2 million Gazans were instructed to flee in the south have been relentlessly bombed with thousands of casualties. Palestinians in Gaza now make up 80% of all the people facing famine or catastrophic hunger worldwide, according to the UN. Every person in Gaza is hungry. A quarter of the population are starving and struggling to find food and drinkable water. Famine is imminent. The 335,000 children under the age of 5 are at high risk of malnutrition. The some 50,000 pregnant women lack health care and adequate nutrition. Infants are dying in droves. Israeli political and military officials, as the South African jurists documented at the International Court of Justice, make no secret of their genocidal intent, nor of their vision of what comes next. In September, before the incursion into Israel by Hamas and other resistance fighters, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu displayed a map of what he called the new Middle East at a UN General Assembly meeting. Gaza, the West Bank, and East Jerusalem had all been incorporated into a greater Israel. Palestine had ceased to exist. The Palestinians are being forced to choose between death from bombs, disease, exposure, or starvation, or being driven from their homeland. There will soon reach a point where death will be so ubiquitous that deportation for those who want to live will be the only option. Israel is lobbying countries in Latin America and Africa to accept Palestinian refugees. Israeli leaders are calling this deportation, quote, voluntary migration. Voluntary migration is not a new concept in the annals of genocide. In the Warsaw Ghetto, the Nazis handed out 3 kilograms of bread and 1 kilogram of marmalade to anyone who voluntarily registered for deportation. There were times when hundreds of people had to wait in line for several hours to be deported. Marek Edelman, the only surviving commander of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, writes in his book, The Ghetto Fights. The number of people anxious to obtain 3 kilos of bread was such that the transports now leaving twice daily with 12,000 people could not accommodate them all. And Edelman, by the way, repeatedly condemned the Zionist state of Israel, calling it unviable, and supported Palestinian resistance, including armed resistance. The Nazis shipped their victims to death camps. The Israelis will ship their victims to squalid refugee camps in countries outside of Israel. This is the plan. No one, especially the Biden administration, intends to stop it. The most disturbing lesson I learned while covering armed conflicts for 2 decades is that we all have the capacity, with little prodding, to become willing executioners.
But the people are in the streets. You could pay off Meta, you can't pay off me. Politicians who serve by any means. APAC, Kofi, and all the companies.
Leanne, the mayor of Washington and the New York City Police Department, the Washington, D.C. Police Department, were going to be called on the carpet before Congress today in hearings because they had not yet shut down the George Washington University student encampment. It's been completely peaceful, but and the university called on the Metropolitan Police Department in D.C. to come in and do as the NYPD did to the Columbia students and NYU and now FIT and CUNY students. But the D.C. cops said, no, we don't want to do it. That's because they've been sued so many times for earlier brutality against protesters. They said no, but when Mayor Bowser in D.C. was going to be having to testify before Congress, they sent the police in this morning, and that campus encampment was also shut down. And all of the media has been demonizing the students. They've been saying the students are bringing violence to the campus, that they've been disruptive of education. And then I'm thinking, well, what about the students in Gaza? What's going on with them? We have another clip. It's like, what is actually happening to the education and campus life of Palestinian students in Gaza, who these Democratic mayors, these police chiefs, the media, they don't seem to care at all. But just watch this clip.
Israa University, Gaza's youngest university, was established in 2014 with a simple goal: ensuring poverty would not stand in the way of any Palestinian that wanted to pursue a college degree. Israa was known for its towering main building and archway entrance, constructed as a love letter to Islamic architecture. The university was actually set to mark its 10th anniversary this year, and to celebrate that milestone, the school planned to open a public museum on campus, housing more than 3,000 artifacts, including relics from the Roman Empire to more modern pieces of Palestinian history and culture. However, Israa University and all of the history it housed within its walls has now been destroyed. On January 17th, the Israeli Defense Forces demolished the university's main building, reducing it to rubble in a matter of seconds. The Israeli military initially tried to justify this action, claiming that the campus had been, quote, used by Hamas for military activity, and that there were concerns the group might use it to attack Israeli forces. But later, the Israeli military admitted there had been flaws in the operational process, including in the decision to destroy the entire building.
That's some flaw, Leanne, a flaw in their planning.
Who gets the right of resistance has always been about dollars and the color of your pigment. But white supremacy is finally on blast, screaming free Palestine to their home at last. We see the lies and claiming it's anti-Semitic.
Okay, so that was the video, and back to you, Alan.
Thank you, Mehmet. Okay, what we're going to do now is take a short break for announcements, and then I want to ask everybody to think about participating in the discussion. If you have a question, comment, thought, please go down to the bottom of your Zoom window. There's a reactions button and raise your hand, and we'll try to get everybody in for discussion, and we'll go as long as we can get everybody in. So before we move on, I just wanted to announce next week we have a very, very important session, very much along the lines of what we're talking about today. Next week, we're having Danny Shaw, a professor at City University of New York, who has been fired from his position as a result of his outspoken criticisms of Israel, the genocide, and his support for the demonstrations of students in support of Palestine. He was a professor at CUNY for 17 years and now has lost his job as a result of the academic repression that is really taking place broadly throughout the United States and even throughout the world. So please come back next week, show your support, find out more about what's happening to not only in Danny Shaw's case, but in the cases of other academics who are being suppressed because of their support for Palestine. Following that, we have additional presentations. One of them is going to be a presentation about artificial intelligence and the impact on the economy and society, followed on May 26th. So what I'd like to do now is just remind everybody that you can sign up for our email notification list by going to ICSSmarks.org, ICSSmarks.org. Put your name in, your email address. You will be sent a notification every week of describing the upcoming sessions that we hold. You can unsubscribe at any time. We don't sell any of our information or give it to anybody else. So do sign up. You can also go to our website and view past presentations. There are up there videos of past presentations and a contact form if you wish to contact us with suggestions for speakers, topics, or anything else that's on your mind. So what I'm going to ask everybody to do now is to raise your hand, participate. I'd like to hear what people have to say. There's a lot of issues here to talk about, a lot of important things to talk about. So please go ahead. So I'm going to start with Richard Wright. So Richard, if you would unmute yourself and please go ahead.
Yeah, I at least wanted to start by addressing something that Mehmet brought up, because I started my sordid career back in 1968 when I went to University of Maine up in Orono. And that was, at that time, that was a hotbed in Maine of anti-Vietnam protests. And it just so happened that that next door to my room were a couple of the leaders of the anti-war. One was the the bagpiper of the anti-war movement, and the other one was a comrade who got me very involved. He in a number of ways. To sort of address one of the things that Mehmet brought up, at that time, it wasn't really about self-interest per se. I got recruited by like I said, this Frank, and in a number of different things. One of which that was going on at the same time was the United Farm Workers grape boycott, and so he recruited me to participate in the strikes of local grocery stores. And the two of them, the anti-war activities and the grape boycotts contribute a lot to my development or my demise, depending on how you want to call it. And that leads into I remember very well around Christmas time. I was down in the building leisure room where they were holding the first lottery. To make things more equal, because there were a lot of complaints that people like myself were getting out of the Vietnam War by virtue of going to universities and then going on to masters and PhDs and getting out of participation that way. Their answer, of course, was the lottery, and my number was 32. So I was I was pretty much assured of something. So it's a little bit more complicated than just the Palestinian thing, and I think you're witnessing that going on now, because there are overtures of Gaza. I think that there's also overtures for one of the reasons I went down to UT a week or so ago was to take part in a demonstration in support of the firing of 50 or 60 of DEI staff members, and then that led me into supporting the protesters, at UT. So anyways, okay, I'll just shut up there and give other people some time. Thank you.
Okay, so I'd like to call next on Goulden, followed by Jean. And go ahead, Goulden, if you would unmute and
Sure. First of all, there's no Israel-Hamas war. There's only Israel's genocide in Palestine. We've been hearing in main media that the major issue with the student encampments and poor victimization of Jewish students and everything. But they are shifting the focus. They are hiding the real reason, real cause that Chris had just summarized a while ago. So we shouldn't be entrapped with these, the main media messages. I'm coming from the student activization also in 1970s. The tactics of the ruling class is not changing everywhere in the world. I mean, in Turkey, even the main media was propaganding against the student organization, saying that there's a provocateur among you. And also police is joining the student sites. I mean, don't be fooled by them or propaganda like this. They think that student organization is just like mindless group of young people. No, they have a strategy, they have agenda, they have tactics, programs, publishing, and even their education of the people, and even their own propaganda going on. So they are not mindless group of people like everybody think that. So the main ruling classes actually tries to push the students to pacifism so that they can be managed easily. Well, we see what pacifism takes us everywhere. Because of the student movements right now, the whole entire United States are aware of what's going on in Palestine. Thank you for the movements. Thank you also.
Well said, Goulden. Well said. Okay, next up is Jean, followed by Janet. So Jean, please go ahead, unmute, and you're unmuted. You're
Okay, well, great. Well, thank you. I really appreciate this discussion. And I do want to say I'm very proud of my little granddaughter who is a student at the Rhode Island School of Design, or RISD. And I spoke to her yesterday, and she said she was part of the demonstrations there, and all her friends are pro-Palestinians, and those few students who are not her friends, and she doesn't know how to deal with them. So I just wanted to say that. But I also wanted to say that, if you'll indulge me, I got my PhD from Columbia University in 1971. So I was there with my wife in 1968 and participated in the occupation, the student strike, the occupation of Hamilton Hall, now Kind Hall, I believe. And it was it was a learning process. We were learning more about what goes on with the university and with our society and the world. So I think that's very important. But it was also important. As I said, my wife and I lived next door. We went to all the demonstrations, and when the police did come and raided the place, many of us left before that because we had fellowships. I was waiting to go to Japan for field research, and that would have stopped had I been arrested there. But the other thing is that, the student protests were very, very good. I remember one of the chants was, I think it was Country Joe McDonald, who sang the song, "Come on, mothers throughout the land, send your boys off to Vietnam. Be the first one on your block to have your boy come home in a box." So that was kind of the sentiment that was kind of building up. And the other chant was "Hey, hey, LBJ, how many kids did you kill today?" And that was part of what basically Johnson could not stand the anti-war sentiment and his association with that. And so on March 31st, 1968, he said those things that every red-blooded American wants to hear from his president. "I will not seek and I will not accept the nomination of my party for another term as your president." So it may be too much to ask, but I'm still hoping to hear from the incumbent. So I'll leave it at that. But again, thank you.
Thank you, Gene. I want to encourage everybody to participate. This is a discussion. Raise your hand, whatever thoughts you have, whatever you want to express, please go ahead. So next is Janet, followed by Sharon. So Janet, please go ahead.
Oh, hi. Oh, out of order. Okay. I'm afraid I was not able to follow what Gautam was talking about. Sorry. In any case, for the students, it's a moral issue. And you probably all know that I've been involved I've been a Palestine solidarity activist for a long time. The students' demand is for the university, the Columbia and other universities, to divest from Israel against genocide. And they always bring it back to the genocide that's happening in Gaza and Palestine as a whole. It's kind of like, although I don't think there were ever any demonstrations against when it was being uncovered that many of the Ivy League and other universities, I think, were built around slavery. They were involved in the slave trade. So the universities now, and Ivy League, the trustees are profiting from, and some of them are on boards of some of the military contracting or companies. That's being uncovered. The Gray Zone has uncovered that. So they're profiting off of this genocide. I also wanted to remind everybody about the Occupy movement and how that was brought down by the US government all over the country by using militarized police. And also what's happening now, I don't know if it's, I did not, well, I was very, very young during the McCarthy era, but this is either the same or, it's or even worse than that. That's happening, not just for college professors, but for people, it's like the Congress just passed this bill about the IHRA definition of what anti-Semitism is, and basically requiring Americans to pledge allegiance to a foreign country. You can't talk about certain things, otherwise there will be consequences. It's an attack on the First Amendment, major attack on the First Amendment. And for the US, I know I'm kind of going all over the place, but anyway, these are some somewhat random thoughts. The US is trying to maintain its hegemony in the Middle East, and Israel is its unsinkable battleship there. Also, I mean, the UN is quite feckless, although, it follows a process and whatever. And but again, the US and its Western collaborators they have control over the UN as well, the way it operates, including, well, what about the ICJ? Nothing, no action has taken place really that based on what's happened there. In any case, I don't know where all this will lead. I understand there's planning for the coming Democratic convention in Chicago. But regardless, the students have been very, very brave, and this movement deserves our support. There are a couple of podcasts I'm going to paste into the chat that I highly recommend, especially Hatem Baziam, his talk at UC San Diego. Highly, highly recommend that.
Thank you, Janet. Now we're going to go to Sharon, followed by Elazar, and then we're going to go to a video. So go ahead, Sharon.
Okay, thank you. Other people have said some of the things I wanted to say. I thank everybody, the good historical materialists here who are setting everything, what's going on today, in a historical framework. And I just have some other things to add about that. So people have talked about how the history of the region and the history of this struggle did not start on October 7th. And that's certainly true. By the way, a friend of mine who's a leader of the Communist Party USA calls it October 7th a revenge attack. And I think that's a good way to describe it. And neither did the anti-Zionist movement begin on October 7th. So it's remarkable that this movement has sprung up largely, or at least in the impetus of young Palestinian Americans. And what we can say about that is that this is what happens when 750,000 people are driven from their land, and many go into form a diaspora, and many land on this continent, and they have children, and their children have children, and they remember. So, of course, there are other factors that have gone into leading up to what's happening today. From my point of view, when I became an anti-Zionist activist in 1970, Middle East studies in this country was essentially Zionist studies. There were a few, very few Arab Americans and Iranian Americans who were part of that, but it was almost all controlled by the Zionists. And over the years, people fought to turn that around, and that has led to a lot of diversity in Middle East studies. Of course, it doesn't prevent people from being fired sometimes, and we're going to hear from Danny Shaw next week. Another remarkable thing that we should honor is the growth of the Jewish Voice for Peace, which has played a major role in this as well. And also, I wanted to say about the university setting, what this should underscore for us is that, excuse me, academia and the university are part of the ruling class. They represent the ruling class. They're not some neutral entity outside of the class structure of this country. And more students are understanding that right now. And finally, I just wanted to mention that Chris Hedges mentioned Marek Edelman, and I just want to say people should read his work. There's a very slim volume called Shielding the Flame, which is a dialogue between him and a famous Polish journalist, which he talks about his life. It was written in 1977, I think. He lived through as a conscious person, through most of the most important and horrific and significant things that happened in Europe and the Middle East in the 20th century. He died at the age of 98 I think, or something like 90-something in 2009. And he was a leader of the Warsaw Uprising in 1943 when he was something like 22 years old. And he was the highest ranking of the leaders who survived. Most of them did not survive. And he became a doctor. He was an anti-Zionist from the start. And he was a member of the Jiddische Arbeiterbund, which was part of the Polish government in exile, but they were not communists. And they were famously anti-Zionist Polish Jews. And anyway, I think his writing is remarkable, and I recommend it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Eleazar. Please go
Can
ahead.
you hear me? Can
We
you
can
hear
hear
me?
you. We hear you
Yeah,
fine.
I'd like to thank the last speaker. Her remarks were very interesting, very excellent, and extolling Marek Edelman. I believe he also fought with all the groups in Warsaw. But let me go to some important things that are often neglected. My niece, who was sent me a link that I think I sent to chat about the uprising of the students at Amherst against Israeli genocide, is herself religious and teaches Jewish studies at Amherst, but opposes completely what Netanyahu and the Israeli government is doing, and indicated to me that 80% of Israelis hate what Netanyahu is doing, but they haven't yet mobilized. There were massive demonstrations a couple of years ago that had signs calling for free Gaza. We can't forget about that. Number two, in Spain, 60 or more universities have risen up calling for divestment from any university that still deals with Israel. It's not just Israel, but people who collaborate with Israel. And so I would like to just add another point, because I think other people need to speak, that we must fight, those of us who are communists must fight on two fronts. One, we must be leaders in the anti-genocide action, but we must stand against it spinning off in personalist anti-Semitic stuff, which occasionally it does. And that must be done with charitable discipline, because some of the people are doing it are just reacting emotionally. They're not dedicated anti-Semites. But we must stand tall on that, in my opinion. And I do, in any event. And I'd like to thank the people who organized this program. I'm sure I have more to say, but I've said enough. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Elazar. So Mehmet, if you would go ahead, we're going to shift over to another short video, and then we'll come back for more discussion. Raise your hand if you have questions during the video. We'll call on people after it's over. So Mehmet, go ahead. Don't forget to check show sound.
Yeah, it is there. And if everybody's ready for another song, here it is. Now we are all in music and all.
And it's all becoming clear when they're gunning down our comrades, and it seems the end is near. As they're loading up the launchers for the tear gas grenades, we can take off our bandanas and kiss behind the barricades. When it's madness all around, and you can see this at a glance, we will sing and we will cry, we will laugh and we will dance, as they shout their marching orders beneath the helicopter blaze. We shall seize the moment for a kiss behind the barricades. They will try to break our spirit, and at times they may succeed, but our love for the world is stronger than their greed. When the building is surrounded and hope begins to fade, in my final hour, a kiss behind the barricades. As the movement grows, there will be hills and bends, but at the center of the struggle are your lovers and your friends. And the more we hold each other up, the less we can be swayed. Here's to love and solidarity and a kiss behind the barricades.
Hello and welcome to another episode of India and Global Left. Today we have with us a very special guest, Professor Gabriel Rockhill. Professor Rockhill is a French-American philosopher, writer, cultural critic, and activist. He is professor of philosophy at Villanova University and the director of the Critical Theory Workshop. This show is in fact a joint collaboration between India and Global Left and Critical Theory Workshop. There is a YouTube platform of Critical Theory Workshop, which all of you should check out. Professor Rockhill, welcome back to India and Global Left.
Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure.
We want to start right away with the encampments or sit-in protests across the United States. More than 100 colleges have participated in these sit-ins or encampment protests. The core demand is to force administration of universities to sell off investment from Israeli companies or holding any portfolio that are related to businesses as usual with Israel. This is also following months and months of divestment campaigns by organized labor. We did a show with Professor Jeff Sharkey, labor historian and labor journalist, on how he thinks this is a massive rupture in American history because it is almost for the first time US organized labor has come out in open protest against investment of their pension funds and union funds in Israeli infrastructures and other investment companies. And I think this sort of coordination between labor and student was optimized yesterday on the May Day rally in New York City, where thousands and thousands of workers and students came together, including unions like UAW endorsing that, which is a big thing, not just because of its size, but also its involvement with the defense industrial complex. Benjamin Netanyahu says that these protests are horrific. He has got full coverage in US corporate media and also British media, and he has linked these protests with that of Nazi mobilization in Germany in the 1930s. President Biden, the New York Times just reported has condemned the protests as anti-Semitic and chaotic. This is following 2,000 arrests over the last 2 weeks, according to a report by the New York Times. You have been involved at the grassroots. What are your impressions, and tell us about how the media has covered these protests?
Well, I think that the first thing to say is that the basic model of US style empire building has been to try to shore up hegemonic consensus within the imperial core, and in particular within the professional managerial class stratum, whose job it is, amongst other things, to kind of manage the minds of the masses. And that this imperial consensus in the core is what allows them then to continue their imperialism abroad, but with a kind of an ability to act unhindered by the kind of class formations on the home front, and to pretend that they are the purveyors of democracy and human rights and whatnot. This kind of system of indoctrination, though, has been very difficult to maintain at certain moments in time, and this is certainly one of them. So we have months of a live stream genocide, which the US has systematically supported. We have major mobilizations, as you mentioned, within labor and as well within the student movement and the kind of broader organizing movement in general. And this has led to a situation that is obviously a PR nightmare for the empire. And it has had a very powerful radicalizing force on young people, bringing many of them into organized political resistance to varying degrees, more or less for the first time, depending on the case. And so I think it's a very exciting and very interesting moment in the kind of conjuncture that we find ourselves in, where the US empire is trying to exert and not only its power in the world, but also to rejuvenate itself in the kind of phase of neoliberal crisis that it finds itself in. I do think it's important, and this is more specifically speaking to the student mobilization, that we have to have learned, or I hope a lot of people have learned from the Occupy movement or the Occupy ICE movement, there are extreme limitations to horizontalist modes of organizing, to occupations, to encampments and things like this. And so what we really need to both be thinking about right now and doing is building the organizational structures that are necessary for us to fight and win in the medium term and in the long term. And so that's one of the immediate concerns. But regarding your immediate question, I've been at many of the encampments, and they're absolutely peaceful, in spite of the fact that there's constant attempts on the part of Zionists or various agents provocateurs to destabilize the encampments. So at the University of Pennsylvania, there were Zionists who came with knives. There was someone who came and sprayed what appeared to be pesticide all over. There are other people who have come and played loud music. Meanwhile, the encampment has remained peaceful, steadfast, well organized. And so the media, of course, is marching in lockstep with the imperial interests of the capitalist ruling class. One of the clearest cases in this regard, and I'll leave it at this, is what happened at UCLA, right? Where you had basically Zionist militants who were allowed to act with impunity on the part of the police, beating up and roughing up protesters, and the police then backing that up, who themselves, the protesters that is, or the encampers themselves, were being nonviolent and primarily trying to simply defend themselves. And then you have outlets like the New York Times or NPR saying things like clashes broke out, no one's sure who instigated them, and basically finding ways of massaging the message to communicate to people that somehow it is those who are protesting genocide that are the source of violence. In this regard, it's very hard for the US media machine to keep a lid on all of this, simply because it's so outrageous, the contradiction between the violence of genocide on the one hand and the clear nonviolence of those protesting genocide on the other.
One of my friends at the University of Chicago, he has been organizing in these encampments, and he's from India basically, and he also participated in these massive student protests in 2020 prior to the COVID in India that merged with the protests against the Citizenship Amendment Act, which basically tried to turn Muslims, Indian Muslims, into second-class citizens. And one of the things he told me was very interesting. He said that he never felt as insecure within these encampments because of the heavy presence of, as you said, the parallel sort of Zionist organizations, but also massive police mobilization alongside. I mean, he says that there are drones, helicopters flying all over the student campuses, which are like unthinkable in most of the global South, while we think that America is this heartland of democracy. It's such a police state, which a lot of people already knew, but it is revealed to a much broader elite audience, let's say.
They will try to break our spirit, and at times they may succeed, but our love for the world is stronger than their greed. When the building is surrounded and hope begins to fade, in my final hour, a kiss behind the barricades.
On May 1st, violent Zionist mobs and other fascist forces, including the Proud Boys, attacked the pro-Palestinian encampment at the University of California, Los Angeles. The organized attack went unchallenged by the University of California and Governor Gavin Newsom. According to encampment participants, these right-wing forces were allowed to physically assault the people at the encampment for 3 hours. The following night, Governor Newsom, with the support of the UC Regents, ordered hundreds of police and California Highway Patrol to attack the encampment. Here are the voices of the student protesters confronting the authorities.
Another one the next hour, okay? Because divestment not only now is a UCLA-wide, but also a UC-wide movement, but also a nationwide, worldwide movement, okay? You can't kill the movement. You can't arrest the movement. We will wait here until there is divestment, because we know you can do it. You've done it before. You've done it before in 1986. So what stops it now?
We'll stay here as long as you look into it.
Until you finish looking into it, until we figure something out, we are not leaving.
Do you think it's fair for us to get arrested tonight?
How do you feel about the potential? How do you feel about the potential of these cops coming in here, arresting your students? What's your opinion on that? How does that make you feel?
You do not try to genuinely protect our safety, right? I'm going to read you some things that the Zionists were saying yesterday on the live stream. The cops arrived. They pulled up maybe 4 hours after the brutality had already begun. And the Zionists on the megaphone started saying, none of us on this side ever want to defund the police. All of us love you and all of us respect you. We support the police. They started chanting, we back the blue, defend the blue, over and over again, right? The police do not scare them. They know that the police are on their side. They know that, okay? We know that the police are not on our side. We know that when the police show up, if they're also throwing pepper spray into the encampment, the police aren't going to go over there and confiscate the pepper spray, even though that's what's causing the brutality, right? Hundreds of people around Los Angeles, including in the encampment yesterday, were calling LAPD. People who were being actively brutalized said, we are calling 911. We're asking for EMTs. We're asking for police, all these things. And they said, we cannot come in yet because we have not gotten the UC's jurisdiction. They have not yet allowed us into the encampment.
Peter Ross is a member of UAW 2865 and a graduate student at UCLA. He was at the encampment during the attacks by Zionists and police.
With the undergrads, but for the most part, these are 18 and 20-year-olds that this is, one of their first political acts, and they've been incredibly brave. I mean, manning the barricades for 3 hours against these fascists, and standing up to these people and preventing them from destroying our camp. The day before now, brought in all the police forces in Los Angeles against us in order to dislodge us. And the thing the corporate media isn't showing is that students stood up to them for a long time. If you're watching the corporate media coverage, you get the impression that the police are omnipotent, and as soon as they came in, they smashed through the encampment. We held them back. I mean, they told us that they were going to sweep the encampment at 6 p.m. and they didn't manage to really arrest all of us until close to 6 a.m. So that tells you something. At one point, a group of police forced their way through one of the entrances, and we gathered around them and prevented them from advancing. And then we had wood pallets and things in our hands, and we very slowly advanced toward them, very peacefully advanced toward them, but pushed them back out of the encampment. We were chanting at them what cops usually chant at people, move, move, move. I mean, it was really something to see the students giving the cops a taste of their own medicine and standing up to them. When the riot police came, they were not able to get through for a while. We held off the first wave of them, and they had to bring in more riot police from all over the city. I mean, the amount of hardware and personnel that were on site was remarkable, and finally they were able to smash through our barricades. But we, these were well equipped, people in full tactical gear, and a group of students with a lot of just pure determination held them off. They were using flashbangs against protesters at close range. They were using rubber bullets. I know at least 5 people got hit directly in the head with rubber bullets, jabbing people with batons. Some people got trampled and badly hurt. And for the most part, they did refrain from tear gas. We have a rank and file caucus in the union, which we've been organizing for a number of years. It really goes back to our strike of a couple of years ago. We found ourselves forced to oppose union leadership, who were basically agreeing to a sellout contract over the heads of the membership, and they used union resources to campaign for it, but denied those resources to the No Vote campaign. So we've found a lot of things in our union that have needed to be changed, and we've come together around that. And we're a part of the UC Divest Coalition, and we've been helping them organize from day one. And we fully stand behind the demands for divestment and disclosure, and the rest of the demands that the UC Divest Coalition has made, severing ties with the police, and for the university to sever ties with Israeli universities and the Nazarian Institute, which is an Israeli institute here, and above all for divestment and disclosure of military contractor assets that the UC has in billions of dollars of investments in the war machine. So we've been out here the whole time, and finally, after the level of violence that we experienced the other night, the union has gotten on board, has realized that something had to be done about this, and they've called a strike authorization vote for next week. And basically they want to have an unfair labor practice strike, or at least they want to threaten the UC with an unfair labor practice strike. I'm not sure that they actually want to go on strike. I think they're afraid they're afraid to do it. But we absolutely have to go on strike. This still isn't enough. The union should be endorsing the divestment movement, and we need to be willing to strike not only in defense of the lives of the students, but also in defense of what they've been fighting for. And the union leadership is still refusing to do this. They have blocked every effort in the union to do this since back in November, when we introduced resolutions in support of BDS, and we passed them at the majority of campuses. We passed them at, I think, 6 out of 10 campuses, resolutions saying that we support as a union the BDS movement. Our union leadership tried to block those and succeeded in some cases, and still hasn't publicized them, and still hasn't adopted it really in its actions, even though the majority of membership has made it clear that that's what they want. So what our rank and file caucus is calling for right now is, yes, we support a strike authorization vote, but we also need support from the union right now, and we need them to support divestment, publicly take a stand on this. And so we're organizing both for a strike authorization vote and an immediate wildcat to rally people to that notion of what the strike should be. That we're taking a stand for democratic rights and against war and for divestment. The UC regents are well connected to the Democratic Party. In fact, Governor Newsom is a regent himself. And they made a very deliberate decision, which went all the way up to the highest levels of the state, obviously, because the UC is a major institution in the state. They made a decision that, I think the fascist attack on this campus was the biggest PR disaster the university has ever suffered, and they will never live it down. And I think they thought to themselves, we cannot allow this to go on. We'll just go in big, however big it has to be, and get this over with. And they decided to use police violence against us. And certainly all the Democrats are complicit in this. And President Fain, the president of the Auto Workers Union, I think he has a bit of a contradiction on his hands, because on the one hand, he issued a very strong statement in support of the students.
What happened?
Yes, we can either continue later or go ahead with the
More discussion.
discussions.
Okay.
Go ahead, Alan.
All right, next, I'd like to ask Laura to unmute. So Laura, if you'd make your statement, comment. Laura?
Yep, here I am.
Okay.
Yeah, the thing that keeps going through my mind is the phrase follow the money, which is why, like Congress is so much influenced by AIPAC, and the schools are influenced by a number of sources, and they will go against the students rather than go against their funders. And so there are funders who are influenced by the Zionist movement, just as there are plenty of funders who are from the military, the war industry, and from pharmaceuticals, and from all of those other things. And so the decisions that are made by the universities are very much affected, whether it's the courses that are offered or the repression of student protests, are with an eye toward, would this protest hurt our funding? And so that's something that I think really needs to be pointed out, that's one of the factors. Congress, one of the factors in the universities is where their money comes from. Our taxes also go to the military and to the police, so it all works together, rather than have our taxes go to funding the universities so that they don't have to get it from the destructive corporations and the imperialist powers. So that's the point I wanted to make. Follow the money.
Thank you, Laura. Raj, if you would go ahead.
Yeah, what I want to say is that President Biden, as Gabriel Rockhill pointed out, is, and I heard him directly, Biden saying, there is no room in America for anti-Semitism, pointing to these encampments as, so he lied. There is no anti-Semitism in these encampments, and I think that's what I got from Gautam also. From his observation, the students were peaceful. And same thing report by Steve Zeltzer on and Mehmet presenting the video on UCLA and other campuses. I hear from others the same thing. So what's going on here is because the US Constitution gives, First Amendment is about free speech.
Raj, if I may interrupt 1 second.
Yeah.
There was a Passover celebration or observation in Colombia, encampment, where the Jewish people, well, people of Jewish faith, I should say, sorry, saying people, and the other people who were in encampment, they celebrated this great emancipation thing. So I felt dumb to hear that accusation, okay? And nobody mentions this event in Colombia. Sorry about it. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. That's actually quite appropriate, because that's what I'm trying to say, that, and you reinforced it from your observation, that there is no anti-Semitism, yet it is the weapon they're using in order to quash this student movement, because student movement goes to the heart of this imperialism. It is basically saying, we don't want the United States to be an imperialist country. We want it to be a normal country. Just like other countries have said, we want to be a normal country. Russia was saying that we want to be a normal country. We are no longer communist. Well, they were apologizing for communism, which is strange because that accomplished a lot. But here, the students are correctly saying, we want to be a normal country. We want to live with others in the world. And this is why this threatens the powers of corporate world, and because corporate world and military industrial complex and basically is about profit making. And now that profit making is becoming difficult because there are other challengers with lower, they have vast number of workers, low paid workers. So there are other actors now, and so greater need to try to suppress those powers. So liberation struggle is threatened, and students are supporting it. So that's why I'm saying that this is a very, very important movement of students right now.
Thank you, Richard.
And one more thing, if I may add,
yeah, go ahead.
that unlike 68, when I was a demonstrator in Chicago, 68 to 71, and then later on, Gautam and I together here, the workers in the United States were by and large not siding with the students but now what has happened, the workers in the United States, lower half of the workers have a hard time living within the system. So that's a radical change, and that is even greater threat to people like Biden. Thank you.
Okay, next, Richard Wright, if you would unmute, and let's try to keep this short because we only have about 10 more minutes. So please go ahead.
Okay, I just want to raise a couple of questions, concerns that I posted in the chat. One of which is whether this movement that's taking place will survive the summer, because the UT commencement just happened last night. The other issue is, to me, is so far that so far this has been restricted, as near as I can tell, mostly to the campuses. And that there's been very little, if any, effort made to get off the campuses. In particular, the Palestinians, I think, are really need some help in this direction. The third thing is that, as I pointed out, or as I said in the chat, we're Marxists here, or we're not all Marxists, some of us are. And we should be really analyzing this in terms of the class politics and the dynamics, and that this is really very much the culmination of some 50 years now of a lack of economic welfare in this country, as well as I think Raj pointed out the geopolitical developments that have taken place. In particular, during Obama, there was the pivot to Asia, and in large measure, what you're seeing is, I believe, gearing up toward basically a war, is my concern, with China. So I'll stop there and pass a bit on.
Okay, next is Janet, and again, we only have a couple more minutes, so please keep it short.
Yeah, I just want to remind everybody that all this is taking place as a result of the October 7th events, which actually took place because of history, but as a result of October 7th, Israel has been committing genocide in front of our eyes, and so it's the Palestinians who are leading this. I mean, we need to keep that in mind, and not that I mean, they are, to me, amazing, and steadfast. The word sumud means steadfastness, and I urge people to listen to Palestinian voices, and especially Hatem Bazium, and I posted his talk, so I encourage you to watch that video.
Posted in the chat. Next, we're going to have Jim and then Mehmet to finish it up. We're just about the end. So Jim, if you would unmute. turn on your video if you can. That'd be great.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So, on May 4th, 1970, 1,000 schools shut down across the country. The difference between then and now is that it was kind of idealism. It was like, we want a better world. The same thing the young folks are saying. The difference is we didn't have climate change coming at us a mile a minute. Mother Nature is not negotiating. It's not political. This movement is going to keep going because it has to morph into the larger movements against imperialism, against climate devastation, etc. And the kids I talk to understand this inherently. The older people don't think about it because they're not going to be here for it. But it's all part of their operational development. And that's what gives me heart, is they have a clear understanding of the relationship between imperialism, the unnecessariness of the war in Ukraine, the horror of Gaza, and the inevitability of people not being able to survive on this planet. So God bless them. Go kids. The material conditions, like Mark says, make the revolution.
Thank you, Jim. Mehmet, last comment.
Yeah, thank you. First thing is that listening to the mainstream pundits and all, they try to frame, even though they are forced to, now they are forced to acknowledge that this is happening. And it's amazing that even with their billions of dollars of brainwashing propaganda, this happened, and they have to come in and talk about Palestine, about occupation, so on and so forth. But let's be very careful that they are trying to soften this up as forget about the Israel versus Hamas, but at home they are putting this as the safety of the Jewish students versus free speech. This is not the case. The free speech is all about a genocide, a human catastrophe that's happening. So the students are showing that classes are not the number one thing. Making money, profits are not the number one thing in the world, that there are human beings, children being slaughtered. So that's why we need to be careful when the pundits, even though they have softened this up, what they are saying. Second thing, Richard Wright brought something very important. Will this movement survive summer? In 1970, when we went on a 9-month boycott, the hardest thing for us to do was to keep the students in the campus. Just imagine keeping 5,000 or 6,000 students with nothing to do, with no classes, no money, no place to stay there and get the ownership of the campus, because we were being attacked by the army, the police, everything. You can think of the fascists every day would attack, shoot us, kill us. But the important thing was to keep those students, no matter what, in the campus, although for 9 months there were no classes, no examinations, no tests, no graduations. And the reason I believe that we were successful in doing this is because the movement was very political. It was led by revolutionaries. It was led by the leftist socialists. But as I go to the campus, encampments today, I'm seeing that, yes, it is positive we want a better world and all of that. But unfortunately, I don't see that kind of a militant organization that is out there. I hope I'm wrong. I'm really hoping I'm wrong. But having a religious tendency, organizing the movement of this resistance, I don't know if they can cut it or not, but it's a very important issue. We're going to wait and see if it's going to survive the summer, as Richard Wright said. Thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you. Okay, so first of all, I'd like to thank Professor Dasgupta for coming to us from New York and giving the firsthand view of what's been taking place. Also like to extend a special thanks to Mehmet for putting together this multimedia presentation, and all of the others who participated today with great questions and comments. I want to remind you, by the way, that Gabriel Rockhill, who was on the last video, he spoke at the library less than a couple months ago. All of past, not all, but many of our past presentations are available at ICSSmarks.org. So if you go there, you can view his presentation and others. I would also like to remind you that next week we have an exceptionally important session with Danny Shaw, who has been fired from CUNY for expressing his support for the Palestinians, against the Palestinian genocide and for the Palestinian struggle. Very, very important. And we want to have everybody come back next week. So at that, we'll stop the recording, and thank you very much, and we'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much for participating. Thank you.
Institute for the Critical Study of Society at the Nebo Proctor Marxist Library receives no corporate funding, nor do we have any paid staff. We rely on the support of working class folks that share our commitment to the socialist legacy of Karl Marx. We continue to need funds to meet necessary expenses, since we can no longer pass the hat at our in-person forums. Please send contributions to our treasurer, either online via PayPal or by check. The PayPal ID is ICSS Sunday, SUNDAY, @yahoo.com, and the name is Richard Fallenbaum. And checks may be made out to Richard Fallenbaum and sent to him at 1225 Nielsen Street, Berkeley, California, 94706. Fallenbaum is spelled Fallenbaum. To donate directly to the Marxist Library, send a check to the Nebo Proctor Marxist Library at 6501 Telegraph Avenue, Oakland, California, 94609, or directly or donate online at www.paypal.me/npml. For information, write to npml@marxistlibr.org, and the website is marxistlibr.org.